Well, hello everyone. So we've Shain Stodt. I hope I'm pronouncing that right here today. Um,
Stodt. The T
Stodt.
is silent.
Oh,
Okay.
Stodt. My
No
apologies.
one ever pronounces it correctly.
Okay. Good, good. So would you mind just giving a quick introduction on yourself and the work that you're doing?
Yes, my name, I'm a writer and an illustrator. And currently my life revolves around my furry family and the book series that I'm writing about, a shelter cat, of which I adopted 5 this year. And her life as she learns how to trust, having been abandoned by her family previously, she learns to trust the bond of love with her new forever person, and then has, based on the strength of feeling loved and feeling safe, she has a home from which to go out into having adventures and experiences. And as I have been writing about Sally, her name is Sally Mitz.
Oh.
Um, I have been thinking a lot and discovering or rediscovering how powerful children's books are. And one, you know, wondering why I had wondered for years why I never got rid of my children's book, even though I've had thousands of books and they've all gone somewhere to a friend or a library. But every child book that mattered to me, every children's book is still there, in a sacred space on my shelf. And but I never quite acknowledged that that's because they were formative. They were my family. They made a big difference to a lonely child who was in a really unhealthy family situation, really abusive, and with the narcissistic mother and problems that just multiplied from that center outward. Here were books, my one place to go to in the confines of my little room, where life was entirely different, where people understood your values, or animals or creatures understood your values. They were kind, they were brave, they were loyal, they wouldn't hurt you or criticize you or betray you. They were your family, and it was a wonderful salvation and lifeline to have that. And I never really thought about that as I grew up and kept all these books on my shelf, why I wouldn't let go of any of them. But as I have been writing about Sally and writing her adventures and experiences and starting to um, illustrate them and try and, with the illustrations as well, convey the feeling and the meaning of the story, I have found these very important underpinnings that were there in early on in children's books, even though I didn't know, and they weren't presented as profound treatises, on the human condition. They were just these lovely stories that somehow were important,
Mm.
because they were a happy, safe space in a dark world at the time. And I looked, as I've said, I've looked at certain books that I understand now gave me um, it gave me an outlet to develop my own identity. If I had taken the identity that I was given, it would have been of a very negative, I would have seen through my mother's eyes, I would have seen someone who was being put down and seen as a very negative person who didn't have anything good about them. Whereas when I went to my book family,
Mhm.
I saw my values.
Mhm.
I saw kindness and loyalty and courage and acceptance in the ways that I needed to know that it existed in the world in order to have the courage to go on and live in the world and find my way. And they're just wonderful stories that at the time I just knew they were important. And
Yeah.
then I put them on my shelf. Um,
Oh,
like, saying about the story, The Wrinkle in Time, I was trying to remember that better. And I read it so long ago. But, there was no love in my family. Everything was very conditional. If you behave this way, you get a treat. If you don't behave this way, you get locked in your room. It was it was just transactional existence. It wasn't anything loving, or it was never about what was good for anyone, what was good for your heart. Um, and I said that to you before. When I was reading A Wrinkle in Time, there is a scene where the children are in danger. There are three children in the book, and they're in danger and they're hurt and they're taken to be healed in a room of blind beings that they're it's all very vague, and the beings can't see them and it's dark, but in that darkness they're held and nurtured and healed and loved. And to me as a child, the blindness was symbolic of not being looked at as an object, but of being loved unconditionally. It didn't matter what you looked like or anything, that you were valued and loved just completely. You didn't have to prove anything or be anything that you weren't. You were you, and you were, and it was so healing to experience that in a book that it's a profound moment in my life.
yeah.
And I remember feeling uh, as if light was all around, as if I were healing, and my heart was just healing because I knew, for the first time I think I ever knew, that that kind of love existed, that that I always knew somewhere it should exist,
Yeah.
that that's how you should feel as a child, that you're safe and
Mm.
you're loved for who you are. And this was my experience of it. And if I had not had that, I truly believe that that might have withered in me,
Mm.
that
Yeah.
capacity to believe in that and feel it. And when you think of that, you start to think, well, these children's books, so called, really had uh, a lot of um, important, I don't know if the word is messages,
Uh,
but they had, these really important gifts
yeah.
to share with children,
Yeah.
that that um, transcended whatever else was going on, and that gives you an identity. That starts to give you a place to build yourself
Yes.
from.
Speaks to your heart.
um, yeah.
Yeah.
And as we were talking about Pippi Longstockings, how she was a wonderful egotist and very safe within herself,
Mhm.
and did what she wanted because she believed in herself, and nobody was going to put her in, a pinafore with, and make her style her hair, and do all these little things. No one was going to write her script for her.
Yeah.
She was writing her own script, and happy to do it.
Yeah.
And that was just so wonderful because, I was always being told you should be more feminine as a little girl, and that, I was being made to dress in ways that I didn't want to, and I felt very embarrassed by that. And at one point, my mother, really tried to dress me. She cut my hair, and I loved my hair, and I loved the way I was dressing. It expressed my identity, and she made me into a doll of herself. And I remember how much I felt. It was like there was a hole in me where my sense of autonomy and esteem used to be. And I realized, that's an awful thing to do. These
Mm,
people are saying they're doing it for my own sake. This is your mother. She wouldn't do anything, not for you. But I knew it wasn't for me.
mm,
I knew that it wasn't a way to treat another person. And at least in the books I was reading, the message I was getting is this is not respectful, you know, and you may be told it is, and you may be forced to act that way because as a kid you don't hold any cards, but don't let anyone fool you that it's going to make you happy or that it really is who you really are, you know. And you kind of, this is a sophisticated word that kids probably have to use all the time. When you a child of a narcissist, you use this word gray rocking, meaning that you tolerate what you have to, but you know it's wrong. And I think that's what I learned to do at that point
wow.
with the help of my books. It, you know, you can't fight them necessarily externally, but don't let them conquer you
Yeah,
internally.
yeah,
Because, childhood is a battle that way.
yeah.
And you may have to fight it.
Yeah. A lot of childhood is about patience as well until you can, set yourself free by the end.
Yes, and you have to learn, the ways to deal with that don't that you can live with.
Yeah,
That you have faith, and you don't, you know, you don't believe that you're not being fooled, even if you are wearing something your mother put you in. You know it's not you,
yeah.
and you don't like it, and you don't like it.
Yeah,
That alone is great.
it is.
Unless because so often kids actually end up losing their identity after a while,
Yeah,
after they've been told, often enough that this is how you should think and look and dress, and they're told that's what you should do, and they're reinforced
yeah.
and they start to believe it. And
Mm,
when that happens, they've lost a piece of themselves that's important.
mm,
And
yeah,
later in their lives, they may have to try and work to reclaim it.
for sure.
And I think books, I mean, like the Mad Hatter said, you lost your muchness, you lost yourself to Alice when she came back through a glass. What was that? The second one. I can't remember what it's the sequel to Alice. And she has been socialized and conditioned and no longer is free to react spontaneously. And he says, you've lost yourself, you've lost your muchness. And so the book is kind of about her trying to regain her independence and her spirit and her muchness.
Oh, beautiful.
And it's really quite incredible what these immortal books,
Mm,
that they call children's books,
they're deep.
how they nurture us.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I remember reading that before, especially about fairy tales, that they have a way of conveying like deep and wise messages in obviously a very beautiful way, but in it sometimes in a simpler way, like but in a way as well, I suppose that engages in our imagination, and it's definitely something I put thought in when we were like talking about Cinderella as well earlier. Cinderella is a good example of that. I think there's some great messages in that story.
Yes, I'm delighted that you sort of reached a similar conclusion that I did, that it's a very misconstrued
Yeah,
story because it really has these wonderful positive and it is like we were talking about. I mean, if you take the picture of what she was scripted to be by her miserable family,
Mm,
that she is all her inner wealth and jewels are covered in ashes,
mm,
and she's scapegoated and dumped upon and treated like an object that's
mm,
there to serve the needs of the people around her and be grateful for it.
mm,
Um, and then you begin to see that she's really the only decent person in
mm,
this whole family. And so why is she the one that's being dumped upon and scapegoated? um, and as I said to you, that's absolutely exactly what the child of a narcissist goes through. It's a perfect description that
mm.
they're assigned this whole unreal role of who they're supposed to be, this whole negative identity, and underneath is this lovely person who just wants to love people and be connected, and you
Yeah,
know, and and that she takes her own initiative
yeah,
to go to the ball, even though she's told not to, and even though she's told she's not worthy, she decides it, and it's such a great moment. And
beautiful.
then that, isn't it?
Mm,
And
yeah.
then when she is seen by someone for herself as a wonderful being, and I'm not thinking about the pretty dress or the shoe, I'm thinking about, I assume that this prince was loving dancing with her because of who she was, of how they were
Yeah,
taught, whatever they were discussing, whatever
yeah,
feelings he was getting from her. You
yeah,
don't just fall in love with dress.
yeah,
Or and so she finally got out of her, through her own strength, out of her dreadful situation, and was really seen
yeah,
and heard and loved for herself. And for every miserable little child, it says, outside of your microcosm, that's what's there. There's the potential for people to really see you
yeah.
and love you, and forget about these people. They're jealous of you. They're not worth you. you know
Exactly. And it's
they're
like
threatened by you.
there was a time limit as
Yeah,
well, there was always going to be a time where Cinderella was going to be able to set herself free, and she never gave up on who she was. And I think when she was at the ball as well, she was radiating like goodness and kindness and good values as well, and that was they were the things that
exactly.
was seen, and she never gave that up in herself, you know.
That's right, she protected her heart.
Mm.
It never went away. Yeah, this is which is really wonderful. It's just an extraordinary showing of character and strength, really, if you think about it,
Yeah.
considering what she was contending with.
Yeah.
It's a wonderful example,
Yeah. For sure.
of it. Yeah, someone keeping their faith
Yeah. Yeah.
in their own heart. So how did she do it? It's just wonderful.
It's beautiful. I often
What
put
you know?
thoughts in. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, no, I think that um, being able to have these special places in books,
Mm,
um, for so many children, and then all our lives, really, it's just, I've had people write me saying, their family was difficult like mine was, and books saved my life when I was a child. I couldn't have survived the family if I didn't have, um, a place of my own, a room of my own, even though it was in my head. It
mm,
was my own room where everything was the way it should be, where life was as it should be, where I felt good about myself and I felt affirmed. And what a gift!
mm. Yeah, absolutely.
So as I write my Sally books, I just wrote them. Well, I didn't think about any of that when I was writing them. I just wrote the books. I guess that's what you do when you
Yeah.
write. You don't think about it. And then as I began to look at them, I thought, well, yes, these themes keep popping up. They just it's in rhyme form, a lot of it, so you'd think it's funny. But here's a shy cat who Sally thinks is doesn't like her. Well, no, it's not that the cat doesn't like her. And if you make the judgment you project your own emotions on someone based on the way they're behaving, you're not really having an opportunity to understand where they're truly coming from. You're just projecting yourself onto them.
Mm.
And this kitty is doesn't dislike her. He's just very frightened. He's always lived out on the street, and he doesn't understand what it is to share a toy. You know, he doesn't know what it is to be loved or wanted and not to be kicked instead of, you know, when he shows up. And it's a life lesson right there in this little book, which I never thought about, that, you know, you don't really know why someone's behaving the way they're behaving, and learning to have some compassion
Mm.
and suspend your judgment
Mhm.
um, is so important.
Yeah, I agree.
It's just all your life you're going to be dealing with people and not know what their backstory is.
For sure.
Uh,
And everyone has one.
every animal has one.
Uh,
I work in a shelter, and I work in a shelter. I work in the shelter I adopted. I help out socializing cats that have been abused,
Oh,
so
wow.
that maybe they can learn to trust and be adoptable at some point. Because right now they're too untrusting. And people are just like that too. You know, they have a story when they come to you, and they may seem strange or abrasive or obnoxious, and they might bite you or scratch you like the cats do.
Yeah.
But that's because of what their life experience is. And if you can just accept them
Mhm.
and you know, let them be who they are, and work with it,
Yes.
then you may have a chance of connecting with them eventually.
Yeah.
I remember when I was working in a restaurant, there was a guy who worked there. We would both come in very early in the morning and do preparatory work. And I would say, "Hi, how are you?" And he would march right past me, wouldn't acknowledge me. And he would go to his station, and he would play this head banging, loud, violent music. I mean, this was 7 in the morning, 6:30 in the morning, you know, and it was about war and killing and guns, and I would think, what on earth is with this man? What an unapproachable, you know, difficult. Why is he forcing me, you know, to listen to this? And then I realized from looking at his body language that, first of all, he was obviously a person in a lot of conflict, just the way he held himself. And I also suspected from his posture and demeanor that he was a veteran, because he had that bearing, and you know, could very well have PTSD from the way he looked. And the music he was playing was potentially his way of coping with his own inner turmoil. Because people, you know, with PTSD, which I have had too in my life, sometimes things that soothe them seem strange to other people. You know, how would music like that soothe you? But
Mhm.
it can.
Mhm.
And so I pulled myself back and suspended my judgment of this man, because I have no idea
Mhm.
why he was doing what he was doing. And I just let him play his music, and I went into my side of the restaurant and I played my music, and we coexisted peacefully. And I no longer burdened myself with, you know, feeling cranky about him. I just gave him his space.
Wow. That's
And
beautiful.
yeah, it's and I think we start to learn that very young as children. You know, why is someone being cranky in class and mean, and you know, why does this child behave that way? I remember one little boy was considered problematic. He had a temper, and I must have been about 5 or 6, and he would blow up at anything, any little thing would set him off. But I learned that, that was just him. He was not yelling at me. And it got to the point where if I would say something to him while he was carrying on, he would calm down and say, "Oh, it's you." Because, he knew that I wasn't there to be upset back at him and to engage
Yeah.
in in saying you're a bad boy, don't act that way. I knew something was going on with him, and
Oh,
that was okay. And just for him to hear that was okay
wow.
changed everything in his outlook, and he would stop, you know, and calm down.
How wise.
These
That's cool.
children have those instincts.
Yeah,
you know,
it's good.
Simone Beauvoir wrote a book once, and I can't remember which book, but I remember her saying, when I was 5 years old, I knew exactly who I was, and I've always been that person ever since.
Oh,
And
wow.
you know, I think that's, for some of us, that's sort of true.
Yeah,
If you're instinctual, if you're empathetic, if you have those qualities, they may very well bloom when you're very young and you have insight as a child. It's
yeah,
not it's not relegated to a therapist or an adult.
yeah. There's a
That's
lot of
why I'm
Mm.
so go ahead, please.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's just as children we have that purity, isn't it? Before a lot of conditioning can come in um and that, it's like we're yeah, it's just more it's pure of heart, and like, we don't question ourselves as much, you know, we don't have
Yeah,
those doubts and yeah, yeah,
yeah, we have, it's almost like we're clear water,
yeah,
there, and we just, what is there, and we experience in a very pure way what's going on around us, what people are feeling, what we're feeling, and you know,
and
and our
unapologetic
insight.
about it a lot of the time.
Yeah, yes, it's and that's true that children really have all these natural instincts, and if we're careful just to support them
Mm.
in that and affirm that instead of telling them what they should do and who they should be, if we let them grow into themselves, we're usually growing a pretty beautiful flower,
Yeah,
however it turns out. You know?
yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love the analogy of a flower, it's like as people I do think that we can be like the growth of a flower, if we're in the right conditions, if we have loving energies around us and the sunlight and fresh air and things and just
Oh, yes.
yeah.
Literal sunlight and virtual sunlight.
Yeah.
Literal and virtual fresh air. It's
Yeah.
all, that's true.
And
That's
just
true.
allow it be, to grow in the natural way it's happening. There's no other way.
Well, yeah. I mean, some of the books I've opened are sunlight. You open them and you've got sunlight on you.
Oh, yeah, that's it.
Very fresh air. Oh my goodness, someone else who got that, someone else who thinks like that, someone else who, I always thought that was true, but nobody else. Oh,
The
great,
kinship is
great.
there.
Yeah. It's just, I feel kind of privileged to have started this journey. I feel privileged to be a writer. I would feel privileged in any art form, actually. I used to be a dancer years ago,
Wow.
and I felt privileged in that too, because whatever you are doing, whether it's dance or music or art or writing or some passion,
Uh-huh.
you're getting the opportunity for it to reflect back on who you are. You're getting an opportunity to learn and grow and challenge yourself and break down preconceptions you may have had and really become a more thoughtful person,
Mm.
which is why I support, literacy. I have like 2 pennies to my names, but I send money to literacy drives because, teach children how to read, teach people how
Yeah,
to read so that they have access to a whole vast world.
yeah,
It's like Malcolm X said, it was I could have spent my life in a library if people had left me alone and the
mm,
world had not had so many things that needed to be fixed. I
mm.
would have just spent my life in a library.
Oh, I love it. That would have been my
Yeah.
dream.
I would say add some cats and I'm there with you.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's wonderful. Yeah,
Yeah.
books are amazing. It's great, as you say, to spend time in creative arts because yeah, it's what a magical place to be, It's to spend time with all, things that inspire you and think about and the, so much
Yeah.
power in it that can't even be explained in a way.
That's so true.
Mm.
There's so many things. I mean, everything from learning about different perspectives and coming to understand the world and other people better,
Yeah,
to other cultures that you wouldn't have thought about, and learning about them and coming to respect them rather than think they're strange.
yeah,
All of these things. I have always found people who were fortunate to have the arts nurtured in their lives to be more tolerant, to be more open, because um, art art is about self-reflect. It is part of it is about self-reflection, no matter
yeah,
how you cut it. It really is, and it just provides you with endless opportunities to grow.
yes,
Um, and in New York, where I grew up in a period where they were cutting the arts out of schools a lot because they had budgeting issues, and for some reason, they considered that something that could be removed without causing any harm. And artists sort of banded together to to make programs to bring arts to children, and eventually, we finally got arts back into the school. But I just remember, what about that generation of children who really didn't even, read, not just read, but get exposure to anything.
yeah,
There did get to pick up a brush and just move it on paper and see what it created.
yeah,
It's like being deprived. It's almost like the same thing as being deprived of nature.
yeah,
you know, for a city child who never gets to experience what nature really is and how profoundly it affects your own personal rhythm and what it means to be connected to nature. If you grow up without that ever opening up in you,
yeah,
it makes such a difference in who you are.
yeah.
And you're missing something so important.
Absolutely.
You're
It's like
missing,
another language.
yeah, it's a deep part of who we are that remains locked away from us,
Mhm.
and it's crying, I think, to come out, but it's locked in. And uh, I grew up in the city, but I was lucky to go to camp as a kid, and camp was just, I became a sentient being in camp. I could nature you rose with the sun, and you felt the different changes that nature went through during the day, and you went through them with nature,
Yeah,
and you learned the patience of animals, and the the patience of the time it takes for the sun to go through its cycle, and all these connections that everyone has get the chance to open inside, and you realize there's something vast in you that you don't have any connection to if you don't ever have the chance.
mm.
And then going back to the city was like going back into this, kind of a little bit of a prison.
Yeah. Definitely hard to go back.
All these things were locked away, and everything had hard angles, and it was too bright, and where was the sun, and where were, where was nature to show you the evening,
Yeah,
the changes evening that puts you to slowly to sleep, you
yeah,
know.
yeah.
It's and art is this art. I think art can give you some of that too.
I
And
think so.
so, even if you don't have nature, if you're a kid, if you can have art, you have some access to those powerful forces that are inside and need to be set free
For
in
sure.
order for you to be whole, to be happy,
Mm, yeah,
to find your creative self.
yeah. Really gives like such powerful insights, like, to your both yourself and the world. I think anytime I sit down to do anything that's creative, I tend to be surprised at what's coming out. It's like there's a, I don't know, something else inside, that, like, has a story to tell. And it's only when it comes out that your consciousness, I suppose, can engage in a way, or your subconscious, I'm not sure.
Isn't it amazing?
Yeah.
Isn't it amazing? I will sit down and I know just what you mean. I'll sit down to draw, and I have a certain story that I want to express. And I have to be a little pedantic about it. The cat is in this kind of room doing this sort of thing, and the cat has specific look, colors, and it's all contained. And then I'll look at it and I'll say, that's incomplete. It's okay, but it's not finished. And then I almost become unconscious, and something happens, and the drawing takes over, and it just keeps going until something is there that wasn't there, that needed to be there, that is the real story, that has the real feeling, and it's something that you have to you just have to unleash it. You don't control, you have to allow it to be there. It's like you were saying, when you write, it can be just astonishing what you end up writing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you wrote it. Isn't that amazing? It came from you.
It's incredible.
it, it's it, it is. And I think everyone should try it. Just try writing. Everyone will say, "Oh, I can't write." Half the people in the world feel like they can't write, and of course they can write. I mean,
Yeah.
hopefully they can write, and they can, if they've learned to write, they can write. And try it, and you'll just be amazed
Yeah.
by what you have to say, what you really, really do have to say.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
something there.
Yeah.
I was saying that to my partner, who is actually a wonderfully funny writer, and I can never get him to uh, write down his stories um, as I wish he would. And he just says, "Well, I'm not really a writer." Well, of course he's a writer. He's a great writer, but there's this sort of judgment,
Mm.
that people have, which stops them from writing.
Yeah.
And I have people writing me saying, "Oh, I like what you've written. I just wish I could write." And I say, "Well, of course you can write. Just sit down and write, and don't judge it. Allow it to be there, and that's your writing."
Yeah. It's totally unique to anyone else's. Yeah. Yeah. I think it was,
Yes.
yeah. Have you ever read the The War of Art by Stephen
No,
Pressfield?
no, I haven't. Tell me about it.
It's a beautiful book. It's about creativity and writing. And I read it myself, and I write a fair bit, but I could relate to some of the things in it. But something that really stood out to me in that book was when he talks about that fear, of, like, writing and sharing your writing. And he says, as a writer or as a creative person, he says that the physical act, say, of writing and the arts, that was given to you as a gift, and that you have responsibility to actually share it, and that it's not yours to keep. And that always stuck with me. Because he kind of says that, you were kind of put here in order to share these things with the world, and I thought that was a wonderful way of putting it.
I agree with you, and that's kind of the cruelty of if people, when people are suppressed, that,
Mm,
and they're all, you know, they're told, no, you can't paint, you can't dance, you can't, is that, you know, the gift is there, and everyone
mm,
can has that within them, and it is our responsibility, in a sense. We are here and we have gifts to share,
mm.
and sharing them is is necessary. What if the writers that saved, you know, were so important to me, didn't share their gifts?
Yeah, yeah,
You know,
absolutely.
what if everyone who's had the courage and the tenacity to create and put it out there just was, didn't have, you know, was too beaten down or not courageous enough, or heard those messages, you know, that you can't do it. You know, what a barren world we would live in. But what people, as you say, don't understand is, it's not that there are certain people who just have these gifts and we're, other people are just observing them.
Mm,
Everyone has the opportunity
yeah,
to share, and everything they have to share is of value.
absolutely. Yeah, yeah. Isn't that
Which
one?
there again goes back to me, to children's books, because where else are you going to get that message set in you? You
Exactly.
know, when you're a kid, when you're a kid. Well, you can get it later too. Like you know, you were saying, a responsibility. It's always there. There are
Yeah,
always these gifts that people are handing us.
yeah,
We'll just listen.
yeah. And we have to embrace those, you know.
Please embrace them. I
Mm,
mean, for me, writing was a nightmare because I was so conditioned to think that if I did something that was seen by the world as a success, or if I felt good about myself, I would be attacked.
mhm.
I would be put down. I would be penalized for it. And I really had the shakes when I started writing my children's books. Somehow I could write my horror fantasy books because they were so autobiographical. They're easy to write. But the children's books were something else. And I started having nightmares. I started, you know, it was like a, a I devolved
Mm,
into the frightened child that read children's books, that was told, you really can't do anything and you shouldn't do anything. And if you dare to do something, you know, we'll get you. We'll
yeah.
do something you'll regret. This kind of feeling of being hunted
Mm,
haunted me all the time. And I would sit at my desk and literally shake because there was this barrier there, and it came from me. I knew that it was from within me. The world outside is, the sun is nice and out and birds are singing, and I was sitting there shaking, you know, and it was a question of pushing through that um, self-imposed but understandable barrier, and choosing to share a gift, and choosing to feel good about it, and
mm,
choosing to, and it's an act of bravery for people who've
yeah,
been told not to do these things, which so many of us have.
yeah,
You know, you can't write, you can't this or that. um, and so I understand when people are you know,
yeah,
why so many people don't feel gifted, and why they don't share these gifts that they have within them, because they don't feel that they should or can, or in my case, you know, if you have that kind of really negative family background, you're told, you know, you'll be punished if you are happy and if you shine.
mm,
But there's so many variations of suppression,
mm,
and there's so many so many negative messages. It may be our responsibility, but it's also very brave for a
yeah.
lot of people to share. And
Definitely.
I think we should take time to appreciate that in ourselves, you know. I mean, after a while, say you've been writing a long time, and I'm sure you know you're a really good writer and you have good, important things to say. Um, but there, you know, for someone like me, I had to start at a below. below that base and work up to it. And eventually it will probably feel like I'll probably be comfortable in it because I will have been able to affirm my own work. But I need to. But it's if I remember as I do, I'm always going to remember that there was that very difficult period, and when encouraging other people to write, you know, in addition to saying, the world needs your gift, you have a responsibility to share it. We need this. I also have to remember to say, and I understand how brave you are.
Yes. Yeah.
And I feel a lot of compassion, and I don't blame you
Mm.
for hiding your gifts. But you deserve to enjoy them,
Yeah.
and we'll enjoy them too. But the important thing is that the person themselves deserves to enjoy their gifts
Yeah.
without any judgment on it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Because it's, I suppose, even at a societal level, there's a lot of things that are rewarded, like the arts tend to fall down
Yeah.
on the list sometimes. And it's even at that, it makes it a hard process for people that are creative, I find.
I do too. It's really, if you think of other cultures where the arts are so valued, an
Mm.
artist is an important person
Yes.
and brings many gifts to the tribe, and the
Yeah.
tribe appreciates what they give, and they're not only they're not any less, but that they can sing and bring
Yeah.
feelings and stories to people. It is considered very important.
Yeah.
And then you look at our culture, which tends to value, I don't know, American culture tends to value money and success and security, and a certain kind of, well, it's not very attuned
Yeah.
to the creative.
No. Yeah.
Um,
And
and
Ireland, I
people who
find.
are creative are not, given much support. I They're sort of treated like they're self-indulgent, and you know they're not given. We don't get much funding from the government. We don't get. It's hard to raise money as an artist, and it's very sad.
Mm.
It really reflects. I think it's a tremendous reflection of the negative traits
Mm.
of American culture. I don't know about Irish culture. When I was there, I remember people respected artists who sing a lot. They respected the musical tradition a lot, but I don't know if they respect the arts in general.
I think it was something that has been very a big part of our culture, but I think it's dying, and I'm not really afraid to say that because I can see that a lot of traditional places and stuff like that are getting shut down and stuff like that. So I feel there's a big decline.
Oh, that's sad. I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah.
I was, see, I remember being in Ireland when I was very young,
Mm.
and I would be in a pub, and someone would just start to sing, and everyone would be quiet and listen to them. You better not talk, or someone would shush you.
Yeah,
And there
it's
was
true. Yeah, yeah,
such respect,
yeah,
for a singer. And I
yeah,
thought, now this is a real culture.
yeah,
This
yeah.
is a real culture where the arts are integral.
Mm. No,
And I'm
yeah, there are some parts like that are kind of like areas that like tourists will come to and things like that. And I suppose you do see a bit more of the
uh,
traditional side there, but there are other parts of Ireland that wouldn't be as touristy, but it's, I feel, dying out a lot in a lot of those areas.
change. What is it changing towards? What are the values shifting towards?
Um, I think just like like the corporate kind of settings and things like that, there's a enormous growth in companies and things like that in cities, and then the smaller towns are suffering, like local businesses are suffering, the
Right.
arts are suffering, things like that, the entertainment
Which means
industry.
it's like you lose neighborhoods, you lose local culture, you lose
Yes.
a lifestyle that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, New York, definitely. When I was a child, New York was a city of neighborhoods, and
Mm,
everyone knew you in your neighborhood, and this was this neighborhood, and that was that neighborhood, and you could walk down the street and feel safe. And there are no more neighborhoods in New York. It's a big city where rich people live,
mhm.
and no one who isn't rich lives in New York anymore. And it's like it completely denuded, and this is throughout the whole country, an intimate life
Mm,
where people is
mm,
just being stripped away,
yes.
and a much faster pace is adopted. I call it the machine pace,
Yeah.
where people are adopting to machines rather than adopting machines to people.
Yeah.
A computer can work 24 hours a day. That's your competition.
Yeah.
And
And very
and
quickly.
yeah, and people seem to want to be secure and disappear into the safety of having a job that fits into that world and that pays them enough and they have their comfort. It's very
Mm,
material oriented in this,
it is. It is.
and that is tragic.
Yeah. Yeah. It is
That's
very.
not the right direction. And
Yeah.
there's nothing wrong with feeling having enough money to live on, for heaven's sakes, but
Yeah.
there 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 there's such a lack of, if you speed
Connection.
up teen life,
Mm,
you no longer have, talk about being out of touch with nature, talk about being out of touch with human nature
mm,
and natural cycles. You just become almost a living brain. It's like you lose so much of your body's sensory connection to the world around you, and you become a cog. What can I say? You kind of become a cog in a bigger machine.
you do. Yeah. That's
I
it.
don't know if people, yeah, and homogenize,
Yeah.
homogenize into one big computer-oriented, money, material-oriented world culture. If,
Yeah.
if we're not careful, it's going to be in the farthest reaches of the Amazon one of these days, because the computers have invaded everything. They are everywhere.
Yeah.
Everyone has a cell phone. Everyone. I just got one myself after resisting it for 20 years because I had to have something in my car in case my car got stuck.
Okay.
But it's such a sad thing
It is.
to lose. Oh, so many important things are lost. It's almost hard to pinpoint
Mm,
all the intangibles that are lost when you lose touch with going a little more slowly, and being a little more human,
yes.
and adjusting the machine to the person rather than the person to the machine.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. 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 It's as you say, like, the paces, like computers can operate 24 hours a day, humans are very different to that. We're like nature, there are days where we need to be slow, there are days that we can operate a bit faster, but it's all a natural process. There's a lot of things to
The
consider.
natural process. And we can't create without that natural process. And
Mm,
honestly, we are better workers with that natural process. They just don't understand that ultimately we have more to give. They just see us as our little machines. I'm
yeah.
talking about boss over these little machines. But like we were saying earlier, that the, oh dear, I'm losing my train of thought. It was important, but that if you if you lose out on, um, on human culture, if you lose out on, um, the importance of feeling with your body, um, how to wake up in the morning and how to prepare yourself to work because you have to run out the door and you have to. excel at something that's beyond your capacity practically all day long, because no one, computers are always, the ante is always being lifted up and you're under pressure, and then you come home under pressure, and when you're under pressure you're not going to be up open, your senses aren't open.
Yeah,
You're not, you're probably just going to walk past the birds singing in the tree, you're probably not going to hear them.
yeah,
You're just going to be tired and under pressure, and it becomes almost a way of a compacted way of existence
yeah,
that lives off of corporate culture and demolishes um, our humanity. A lot of important parts of our humanity, our need to be connected to other people and take time to listen and to go home and have quality time with their family, not be exhausted and worrying about what we're doing at work tomorrow. The
yeah,
ability to be there as a person for another person.
yeah,
Where does that fit into corporate culture? It doesn't. You're not supposed to be a person. You're supposed to be a performer in
yeah,
corporate culture and just meet standards. And if that standard breaks you, that's too bad.
yeah.
There's somebody else.
That's it. Yeah, yeah,
So where are we going with that?
yeah, yeah. A lot of people's self-esteem is going to get affected by this. Everyone not able to meet up to this like level that's getting bigger and bigger and bigger every year. It's crazy. It's crazy.
I think that's why they threaten us with AI all the time. It's like eventually you won't be needed, you
Yeah.
know. So you better work even harder.
Yeah. Or AI will get
But
all our
but
wages.
but within that, those of us who really do care a lot about people and human culture and the earth and the animals within the earth and all the things that are so precious that we're given and that get ignored as corporate culture dominates, it becomes all the more important that we do what we do
Mm.
and that we continue to hold true to our beliefs and our values, and we keep creating these spaces that these writers created for me when I was a child,
Yeah,
that gave me what I needed in order to continue on and be myself anyway. It's just all the more important, and our efforts are never in vain.
yeah.
They're always important,
Oh, yeah.
even if it looks like we're getting overwhelmed by slush. um, and, I grew up in the 60s where I was fortunate that the music that was a revolution, a social revolution, and everyone was talking about how everything was going to get better and the world was going to become, everyone's going to be equal in the world and we're all going to be kind to each other and everything like that. And of course, there was a backlash to that, which is just the opposite of that. And as I look at my niece, and I asked her, "What do you want to be?" And she says, "Well, I want to be a famous actress that's rich." And a lot of kids give that answer. A lot of young people give that answer. That's their role model, and I feel that they're so terribly cheated
Yeah,
that our unlike what I grew up with, our role models out there, our singers, our which is mostly what they have exposure to, are not really giving us messages about that. And when they do, it's just precious. When they give us something that affirms us, it's just precious. It's just, the arts are powerful. They're a powerful platform to work from. And if they can reach an awful lot of people if they're allowed to, they really can.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So powerful. So powerful. Oh. The big topics.
Yeah, the big topic and not giving up.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, keeping
But yeah,
your heart strong.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. It matters. It matters. It's like what you say, like if we didn't have the books that we were reading when we were younger, that gave us comfort. And it's a ripple effect. I believe the arts are, coming down you know, through all times, and it's something
yeah,
that we just need to
they
keep
do.
fighting.
They certainly do. I mean, we're still reading books from centuries and centuries ago
Yeah,
that still speak truth.
yeah.
And I'm hoping that there's some little truth in the book that I'm writing that somebody somewhere will find comfort in, or some little piece of light. And I know that you bring light to people,
Oh,
and it just can't be underestimated. All the more so because right now, a lot of people are kind of lost,
yeah.
to just trying to fit it, get into corporate culture and feel safe within that structure, um, and sacrificing individuality to that, which is just a crime.
I agree. I agree.
So, yeah, I think here's a shout out to everybody, every single person who uh, keeps telling their own truth, their own, and sharing it, and
Yeah,
being kind enough to share it instead of, you know, wondering, should I talk about this? Yes, you should. You should share, because you're lighting fires.
yeah, yeah.
Your writing is lighting fires. Your podcast is lighting fires. You're lighting important fires, like fires were lit in us when we were younger.
Yeah,
It's just,
that's absolutely true. It's a beautiful way of putting it. And that's life itself, isn't it?
yes,
Mm.
yes, it is.
Mm.
It's breath.
It is.
Yeah. I I wonder, when we have such enormous reach as we do now. I mean, even in the farthest reaches of whatever part of world culture used to be cut off.
Mm.
You'll find a television and a cell phone, and you'll find this incredible invasion. And I find myself wondering, when, well, how do we get some handle on that? Because it's a massively powerful tool that's projecting very often not necessarily um, life-giving,
Mm.
life-affirming messages. And you see, as we said, we see the world culture as kind of homogenizing and conglomerating to a certain set of values, which are projected through media and
Mm.
through technology. And any bit of getting into that technology, I think the writer Cory Doctorow would agree with this. Any bit of getting into that technology and infusing it with some beauty and some truth and something uplifting and that gives somebody courage, um, is great. And we just need to keep up our strength and keep doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. Keep up the good fight. Yeah.
Keep up the good fight, and not give in, not think that
Yeah.
we can't get there,
Yeah.
not think that there won't be a day when the television, in outer Mongolia isn't saying, don't worry about what someone else thinks you look like. You look
Mm.
beautiful just as you are.
Yeah.
Your shape is bright,
Yeah.
and what you think is perfectly justified. One day that they may hear that message. Maybe they'll hear 10 other messages that you wouldn't want them to hear, but someone will hear that message. So
True. Yeah.
that's the thing about the strength of creative people is
Yeah.
is is their ability to regenerate and keep trying and
Yeah.
keep giving. and keep reaching out. And and because we have cycles and we understand cycles, we also know you have to rest sometimes
Yeah.
and then regenerate.
Yeah, exactly. And that's important too for inspiration to formulate.
Yes, to give
Yeah,
yourself time.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, it's been beautiful to chat with you today, Shane. Oh wow. I love these conversations. It's been wonderful.
It has been wonderful. It's been a delight and a joy. Thank you for inviting me
Oh,
on.
no, it's been
Um,
amazing. Um,
I guess if it's permissible, I just like to invite people to visit my website, if that's okay, because I have, illustrations and stories, and I've written about some of the things we've talked about there, my thoughts about it, and it gives them an opportunity to put their own comments on these blogs and say what they think, which I would very much like to hear.
oh yeah.
Um, okay, it's just my name, ShainStodt.com. And I would love to hear what people think. I know you're also interested in that too. We want to know how they're responding to what we're saying,
Yeah.
what we have to say. It's been delightful, Claire.
Yeah, it's really been beautiful. It's been beautiful. I hope we talk again soon.
I do. I
Yeah,
do too.
yeah, yeah.
You take care of yourself. Stay warm.
Oh, I will.
Healthy and
Stormy Irish
happy.
weather.